Hey, something really cool happened this summer. I'm going to talk about it in this video because this Stone Age people, it's been a mystery up north in Scandinavia. Like so many areas around in Europe, a lot of these hunter-gatherers, especially the men, died out when these warrior bands, the clan culture from Central Asia, the Indo-European tribes, the Yamnaya as they're called, came and took over everything and basically started the Bronze Age. But not in Scandinavia. And what happened there? It's really strange, this mystery of the haplogroup I1, which I have, by the way. And how come not only did they survive, but actually thrive? And this has also been a sort of like a marker for a lot of people on where the Vikings went, since a lot of I1 men were also Vikings. But of course R1A, R1B, and you find others who were part of the Vikings. There was a lot of mix, right? But it's been a marker because also before the Viking Age, a lot of these same bands and clans and Germanic tribes all came out of Scandinavia. And this, as you can see here, is a present day distribution of I1 around in Europe. And now with this, let me show you here now, this new paper. This is only a preprint, came out in May, and I have it was really interested in reading it, and I'd like to share some of that with you. I thought about it this summer while I was on the Faroe Islands, and then this Genomic Atlas. I really like this website. They came out with a good reassessment here, which is really cool in relations to this preprint. Basically, they just went over and took out everything they thought was interesting and wrote it down. And I'm going to go through some of that now because it's really has been a mystery. And I have talked about it in a few videos, like trolls are real, and talked about all these Germanic tribes and the influence they had on Europe towards and into the Viking Age and the Middle Ages. And now we can actually say a lot more. And I'd like to share that with you right now. It won't take long. But as you can see here, it has puzzled experts a long time. And when I go through this, this is from Genomic Atlas, I see that there's been these hostile, aggressive hunter-gatherer populations to the north, and they've been very... I'm going to comment on from the Genomic Atlas here now, because I talked about this. I had a very interesting discussion with Johannes Krause at Max Planck, whom I work with in some projects, and that's a video here. I think I'll put a link up there somewhere, where we talk about how these spread of genes out of Scandinavia and selection, lactose tolerance, for example, a very strong drive came out of Scandinavia in the Iron Age. But also people like the archaeologist Christian Christiansen, who's very important in Scandinavia. He has more and more in the last years talked about how the start of the Viking Age actually was cemented even in the Bronze Age. And that's what we see now in this paper. These tribes up north who were able to defend themselves against these warriors. Of course, it's mountainous, it's really far up the north. The fair skin helped with the D vitamin. They were more adapted to survive that far north. And of course, we see a bottleneck. I'll come to that, where it just... whenever there was a problem, they just went north and came down again. And Johannes Krause talked a lot about that when we had our talk on these farmers, the first farmers to Scandinavia. They really had a problem trying to establish farming in southern Sweden and Denmark, and that had to do with these hunter-gatherer populations further to the north. And this discovery of the third and final Scandinavian cluster, it's hugely significant. I agree with this, you know. It brings us one step closer to understanding Scandinavia and what happened when these hunters met with the warriors and they mixed and became Vikings. very easily said, to make it easily to understand, I guess, in an overview kind of way. I talked about this in an earlier video also, because it represents a type of genetic drift that it says here was unique to Scandinavians and also later Germanic tribes. All right, and this is from the actual paper here, where Alan Toft and his people say we find that it forms the predominant source for the later Iron and Viking Age Scandinavians, as well as ancient European groups outside Scandinavia who have documented Scandinavian or Germanic associations. Anglo-Saxons, Goths, Franks, Alemanni, Lombards, on the Balkans, in present-day Spain, the royal families there, and also in Portugal. You know, it's all over. And it's really, really cool to now have actual proof in this preprint, especially on this haplogroup I1. Where they see here, as you see on the second here, I'm not going to try to even, there we go. The ancestry in the early Nordic Bronze Age indicated considerable reproductive advantage of individuals. So what happened there? You know, this is what I talk about in Trolls Are Real. This new blend, you might say, that these warriors, they had no other choice than to mix in with these men who were huge and giant, and we'll get to that also very soon. And they, even in the Finnish population, 28% of these the same roots as the Sami and the Kven and the Finn and the Estonians. But they have so much of this I1 also, and that has to do with this bottleneck probably when they had to escape from these warriors who tried to well, depopulate them. All right, and we see here some skeletons of unusually tall stature, and I'll show that to you now also. So coastal traditions became increasingly important in the late Neolithic. All right, that's when farming spread, and some of them strikingly similar to those already practiced by the hunter-gatherers of the pitted bear culture. And it was connected to an emerging warrior identity that will continue into the Nordic Bronze Age and well beyond it. And what they mean here is up until the Viking Age. The roots of the Viking Age are actually in the Bronze Age. It's all connected now. We can't see this in different time periods. I talk about this a lot in my videos, but it's so fine to see the research now, even more research come out. All right. So the Neolithic people who did farming finally achieved order in a region that has been quite chaotic. All right. But the old customs were all integrated and unified, and this is this blend I talk about. All right, and we can see here about the height. I talked about the height. Average height in late Neolithic Sweden of 181 centimeters. That's actually taller than today. And it says here that the average height in Bronze Age Europe was 167 centimeters. And I talked about this also in the Secrets of the Germanic Tribes, and also I think in the Trolls Are Real video about the average height of the Roman soldier being around 160 centimeters 2,000 years ago. And even the average height of the Roman citizen was very low. And that's where you have these giants, and these people must have been giants. And we also know now there are a lot of people from Scandinavia who were tall, who had mixed with the warriors, the hunters and the warriors mixed, right? Went down as mercenaries even in the late Bronze Age. Even David and Goliath. Goliath, he was a Philistine. Excuse the word, but they were called Philistine people. And we know a burial, which has been done DNA research on in present day, I think, Israel, in the Middle East. A Philistine burial from the time of Goliath. And even there it says proof of DNA from Northern Europe. So it's the same thing. They must have been giants. The roots of the trolls, the troll myth is here. They align remarkably well with what the skeleton material tells us. That's DNA proof, all right? And that has to do also with this lactose persistence among late Neolithic and Bronze Age Scandinavians. This is what I talked about earlier with Johannes Krause. And a lot of Scandinavian skeleton remains show serious skeletal trauma as a result of violence. This was not a peaceful time. If you've seen Heilung and their music video, Krigsgalder, Galdre, war, call for war, they have taken these petroglyphs, the rock carvings from this time period, and made life to them. Maybe I put a link down below so you can see that. And it really shows a violent time. And we know in present-day Spain and Portugal, all men, close to 100% of all men, disappeared in a very short period of time. And on the British Isles, the number is about 90% of the men who built Stonehenge. All disappeared, but not so in Scandinavia. And that's really, really interesting. And massively important to the formation of what became the Germanic tribes. This is the new findings, all right? The lineages are practically all migration period samples, where we find the earliest I1, a branch that essentially 99% of all later I1 men descend from. So all in all, I agree this is a period of huge significance, more so than we thought. Now we know so much more because of this one paper, and it's because in my videos we see, where I've talked about this, we see a lot of proof here and there, but we need to put it together and look at it more in a historical wider perspective, which I have done in different videos. And now we can, it's easier to do it now. I talked about this bottleneck. It's strong as just a heavily bottleneck before it expanded rapidly. That's the I1 haplogroup. And it even talks about an explosive expansion during the Bronze Age, Iron Age and Viking Age of this I1 haplogroup. And that's a very interesting time period. A lot of things has been going on. And this is the story of Lord of the Rings. This is something they should make TV about. It's the same clan culture. It's the same, these ancient Norse gods who came and met with these people in Northern Scandinavia, and they had to blend with them, just like Odin's mother, Bestla. She was a Jotun, a giant. Ygre, we call this Jotun the giant women. And that was the only way for them to mix. It's in our oldest writings, and now we find proof on it on DNA. It's really, really cool. I1 must have been limited to a remarkably small group of men, it says here. And even they suggest perhaps at times even a single man. But we've known about this bottleneck for a long time. It has to be a bottleneck, and the reason is obvious, because these Yamnaya warriors came and took over and they just killed off all the men, at least those who opposed and didn't subordinate, because they had to have this class society with them ruling at the top, right? But that didn't work out in Scandinavia, and it has to do a lot with geography, because of the mountains. And if you look at the map, I talked about this earlier also, and in my last video here on this channel, if you see the map of Northern Europe, I mean, in Scandinavia, Norway and Sweden, there's a lot of mountains to escape to, all right? And there's a lot of difficulties so far north for the that's disadvantages if you don't have the fair skin, the two genes for the fair skin. This is what they call sangre azul in Spain in the early times of the reconquest of Spain in the Middle Ages. Sangre azul means blue blood, but basically it just means fair skin. And to have, like with me, the blood inside here looks like it's blue. And that was the class society that the Visigoths, the Suebi, and well, before that the Vandals had, where they had their own laws for themselves and Roman laws for the rest of the population who were further down. And of course the hierarchy, they wanted to marry up, you know, to have that blue blood. That's the origin of that expression. And These other studies here find 0 samples of haplogroup 1, I1 in the Bronze Age in continental Europe, which is intriguing in our sense when we talk about understanding history in a larger perspective and what happened when these warriors came. This origin is just amazing and great, and if you see here, I've gone straight into the web page of the Genomic Atlas. I just want to do the summary here now. I'm not going to make a long video about it, but it's just so cool. I really needed to talk about it. Here they talk about the Gothic origin and how the Goths migrated from the homeland. The strong connection between Poland, but it's not just Poland. It's Warsaw and this valley of the Vistula River. It goes all the way down to the Black Sea or down to the Moravian Gates, where he controlled the amber trade at this time. And what's fascinating is, as they say here, they even find this subclade in modern times in the Balkans. So even more proof that a lot of people in the Balkans have the same genetic imprint from the north, from Scandinavia. And getting back to the Bronze Age, one of the most significant findings is that the transition from the late Neolithic, that means farming, to Bronze Age was not accompanied by a massive gene point from the south. The elite seems to be locals of late Neolithic origin. That's exactly what I've been saying. That's exactly, if you check out the video, Trolls Are Real, it's the same thing there. There is one thing, I'm not going to go into the details here now, but this here, as they concluded here, more samples are needed, and especially from Norway. This paper has only 1 sample from Norway. This was the same problem with the big Viking paper that I was a part of. It's difficult to get samples from Norway. We were working on that, and I was working on that with these guys also before we had this split a few years back. So to summary, Scandinavia underwent substantial genetic turnovers, and it says, I didn't say that, I didn't show you this, but in Denmark and southern Sweden you find a complete turnover, genetic turnover, meaning all the men died out, and that's where you have this bottleneck, and yeah, a complete replacement, as it says here, but also in southern Sweden. And the core population that would form the basis for Scandinavian populations with their own genetic drift and 3 major Scandinavian Y DNA haplogroups were present at high frequencies, even in the late Neolithic. And something really, this mix went on, and these peoples didn't win over each other. They had to blend in. But more data is required, especially for Norway, to get a truly representative sampling. This is cool. This means that we now know a lot more about early Scandinavia, and especially the connections to the Germanic tribes and expansion, this exodus out of Scandinavia, which really was just like a Viking age. If it hadn't been for the Fimbul winter and Ragnarok in the 6th and 7th centuries, new trading routes because of the Franks and the rise of the Franks, and then the rise of the Vikings, all this is connected for more than 1,000 years, going back to the first Scandinavian raiders and groups and clans who came out, which is also has got to do with the mountainous Scandinavia, because in the Iron Age, they not only had a lot of trading goods like in the Bronze Age, but they did have iron, lots of bog iron from high up in the mountains, and this is what made together with better climate, surplus of children growing up, and in a great warrior culture. So iron and geography has a lot to do with this, but we can now read it in the genes, and it's really cool. I wanted to share it with you. Hope you like it.